American educators growing to be culturally responsive. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "People don't get along because they fear each other. People fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they have not properly communicated with each other." The Middle East. What comes to your mind when I say the Middle East? Is it pictures of different women dressed in different clothing? Are there words that come to your mind? Is there a Time magazine photo that's infamous? The unknown? Women of oppression? Is it men dressed in long robes with different style of clothing and beards? Now think about Iraq. What comes to your mind when you think of Iraq? Any words such as burqa, hijab, Saddam Hussein, oppression, different? Osama bin Laden? Are you able to identify the Iraqi flag? Does a friend come to mind? How about somebody who's fought alongside people in Iraq? Or a family member? How about an innocent children suffering from the bombing? How about ISIS or 9/11, Saddam Hussein? I want to disband any stereotypes and bias that you might have against Iraq or the Middle East. What stereotypes do you have about people in the Middle East? Do you group them all together? Do you know their differences? There are many different countries and cultures and ethnic groups in the Middle East. This is a cultural iceberg showing at the tip what's on the outside of a culture, and at the bottom, in the areas that we can't see underwater, the areas out of awareness for us that force or drive why people do what they do. Why the top of that iceberg, as you see, is dress, games, drama, cooking, fine arts, music, culture. What is embedded in their culture in the bottom to sustain what is on top. This is Iraq, the real Iraq. I'm Jackie Flores, and this is in correlation with our Communication with Immigrant Parents project, EDU 587. Iraqi culture, in the tip of the iceberg, you might see images such as these. Iraqi soccer. You might see a family thinking about a family eating. The Iraqi flag, an Iraqi wedding, Muhammad, the Quran, Islam. These are all outside things that we can see that dictate and determine what are the cultural norms in their culture of body language, eye contact, gender roles, things such as these. So to start with, I'm going to talk about a little bit about the history. We all know that it's the land between the rivers, the Mesopotamia area. The Tigris and the Euphrates rivers are normally what people think about when they think Iraq. It is the birthplace of civilization, where Christianity, Judaism, and Islam history resides in this land. History shows us a constant taking over of this Iraqi land. Everything in an Iraqi's life is rooted and grounded in Islam. Islam is a religion in which Muhammad is their prophet, and their holy book is called the Quran. There are 5 pillars, which are the acts of worship, as you can see them, and the biggest one is the holy pilgrimage to Mecca, at least once in someone's lifetime. You must need to know, as an educator, that there are 2 different types of Muslims. There's the Sunni, which is more kind of like Protestant, if you're talking about Christianity, in similar ways of approaching the and keeping the laws, and the Shiite or the Shiites, which is more like Catholic. The reason you need to know the differences between these two for Muslims, as I will talk about later, is the impact that it has on current events of ISIS in Iraq. Family is the second largest thing that is embedded in their culture. Their family is the most important thing to them, that they are always with, that the women are in charge of raising the children and the men are in charge of bringing home the money. However, there are very few opportunities for girls to go to school in Iraq, which makes this very difficult for women to be able to provide for their families. One of the biggest traditions in Iraqi families is weddings. Weddings are celebrated for many days, that people of their family travel to their city and are able to celebrate with them for many days. Ironically enough, the wedding is actually not the biggest festival, however, the days leading up to are. Islam affects so many different areas of Iraqi culture, as far as the way that men and women dress, their modesty, male and female interactions, arranged marriages, gestures, and eye contact. Let's talk about dress for a moment, and modesty in relation to females. Females are told by the Quran that they must dress modestly, that there's a specific part where it's saying not to show the neck. Therefore, they wear something called a hijab, which covers their hair. They also are covered from their ankles all the way up to their wrists. This is to protect their modesty and giving themselves fully to God and to their husband. Many families are in an arranged marriage. However, usually the higher classes in Iraq are able to choose yes or no if that's whom they choose to marry. Gestures in Iraq are a little bit different than in America. You don't want to use your left hand but shake with your right, and you want to make eye contact, but not too much eye contact because it's considered hostile or rude. So if you're going to meet an Iraqi family, or if you want to marry into an Iraqi family, usually this does not happen. There are many different ethnicities in Iraq, such as Arab, which are the Sunni, and the Shiites, which is the Muslim religion, and the Kurdish, and 5% other. As you can see, in Iraq, there are specific places, like for the north, for example, where the Sunni Kurds reside. There's Muslim that are Kurdish. These four main different groups in Iraq generally set the pace for where someone is to live and whom they're going to marry. The current government of Iraq is a parliamentary democracy, a Republic of Iraq, that has 3 different branches, as you can see. The president of Iraq is Fahd Massam, and the prime minister, Adir al-Badad. There's a council of representatives and a judicial branch and a legislative branch as well. Now, the current government has been struggling, as you've known in the news, with ISIS. Why you need to know about ISIS? ISIS is an extremist Sunni group. It's an extremist Sunni group in the Muslim religion that wants to purify itself, which is why there are all of these beheadings, and which is why they keep on taking over different parts of the land. Why do you need to know about ISIS for this presentation? Because ISIS has displaced so many different people. Some families come to the United States for refuge, or some families know relatives who are affected by ISIS, or friends. All families in Iraq are affected in some way by ISIS with displacement. And here's the thing. More than anything, Iraqi people want the world to know they are not all terrorists. It is a small extremist group. It has an enormous amount of power, and the Iraqi government has been struggling to keep it down. Now think for a moment if you were a refugee in a country that you had to leave your land forced because of unexpected, unfortunate circumstance in the land. Wouldn't you want someone to come and visit you? This is why I highly suggest, as an educator, it is our responsibility, especially to those who are refugees, to go and visit their families and to welcome them into our country. In a home visit, if you're a female, you should dress modestly. Males, a collared shirt is completely acceptable. If you're going to go, and you can, bring flowers to the hostess, some fruit, and small treats for children. It is impolite to stare for long periods of time because they consider it rude or hostile. Iraqis usually eat dinner around 9 p.m., so if you're invited in the afternoon, don't expect dinner. Expect hot tea or sweets. If you're going to greet them, a handshake is completely acceptable. If you're a female and you've known this family for a long time, then you're able to kiss the female on the cheek. If you're a male, do not do this. If you're going to be late a half hour, that's fine, but any more than that, they would expect a phone call. For a meeting outside the home, the attendee is the one who concludes the meetings. Same thing for inside the home. For a home visit, you're the one that is going to conclude the meeting. Especially because in Iraqi culture, if you come into someone's home, they're welcoming you in to their home for 3 days. That's the expected time, because you can come into their home and stay the night for 3 days without them ever asking, "Why are you here?" So you need to be the one that concludes the meeting. They will never kick you out or ask you to leave. This is very important for you to know so that you don't stay there expecting them to conclude the meeting and then they ask you if you need a pillow and you get confused. I hope this helped talking about Iraqi culture and that you feel comfortable a little bit more going into an Iraqi home. I have a few more resources that if you want to investigate further, I personally think are going to really help you in talking about culture and Iraqi culture. But the Lewis model, as you can see here, is a model that I believe that really helps to discover your personality and how it can relate not to just the Iraqi culture, but other cultures in general. You can Google this, the Lewis model, and it will pop up and you can study that to see how you relate to any type of culture that you can see on this continuum. There's also this TED Talk that really, really makes you think about different types of biases that you might have of women who wear the hijab, which is the thing around their head covering their hair. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and please, please, please go visit an Iraqi family.